Good morning, everyone. Hopefully, you're having a solid start to your Friday here. Really, just going to get into right what we need to know for round two and go over PGA DFS and props for today. Of course, normally we're doing these live streams at night, but yesterday went to the Steeler game, was able to see and put an absolute ass kicking on those Falcons, and now ready to get back out there for the last 3 days of the tournament. We've got a little coffee in hand. Tournament doesn't start for another 2 hours, so we've got a little time to build some lineups, perhaps even get a few more prop slips in, and hopefully, like I said, have ourselves that Friday slate we're looking for. So first off, welcome to the stream. If you guys are already here, overachievers at this early hour. We've got Anthony, Clay, Maga, and Marco down there. So first off, welcome all of you, and hopefully if you're not a morning person, you've got some sort of coffee in hand so that you can wake up. You're probably all morning people, though. I'm just the worst when it comes to waking up, so gotta have that little coffee in hand. So if you see me sipping on it, that's why, so I can wake my damn ass up. Let's see. So we got Anthony who asked how the heat is. It's damn hot, I can tell you that much. I'm from South Florida, though, so we see that pretty much every single day. What's going on, Clay? What's going on, Maga and Marco? 68.5 strokes for Fitz, Burns, and Haddon. Is it set up to play tough? We'll talk about that, right? That's not really a straightforward answer. Their wins are going to be a little bit higher, but the course setup, like in terms of pins and whatnot, it's probably going to look very similar to round one. So you might see a slightly harder average here for round two, but yeah, we'll get into the specifics later. I don't think I'd say that it's playing tough, though. PD says, let's eat. Absolutely. We actually got we got some donuts here too. So when we're done on the stream, we'll be able to eat some donuts, get a little energy in us, I suppose. And Clint says, what's up, Luke? Can you post another Discord link? Yeah, I posted one last night. So if you weren't able to get in with that one, I can DM you one directly, but I don't think 10 people used the one last night. So yeah, I'll DM you a separate one, but that one should still be active. All right. Either way, though, let's get into today's slate and start to go through, some of the things that we noticed here, some of the things that we should be paying attention to. So over here for the winning, not the winning score, the scoring average perspective, played nearly 2 strokes under par. It was actually even easier than I was expecting. Obviously, the low winds let these guys go out there and eat. In the firm and fast conditions that I think you may see on Saturday and Sunday aren't really here yet, right? The fairways, bouncy like I was mentioning, but the greens, especially with anything less than I'd say like a 6, maybe 7 iron in, we're holding quite nicely. With long irons, right, a par 5s, you saw quite a bit of rollout there. Some of the longer par 3s, right, they're all over 200 yards. You started to see some of that rollout too. So today, that effect is just going to be even more pronounced. And then obviously, like I mentioned, you also have the higher winds here too. So conditions in general here for the next round, I think are going to slightly deteriorate. You can see over here for Friday, we've got in like the 13 to 15 mile an hour range when it comes to your wind gusts. And then your sustained winds, rather than being like 2-3 miles an hour, essentially non-existent out there yesterday, they're going to be closer to like 8 to 10 miles an hour. What that's going to do is that's going to, add a little bit of variance when it comes to your shots, where they're actually going to land. But more importantly, I think it's going to cool these players down. That's definitely going to cool me down out there on the golf course. So I know it might play slightly more difficult because of that wind. It may actually keep scoring around the same. And this is wild. Okay. This is a little bit of a hot take, right? I don't think it's going to have a massive impact at all. Like maybe a 0.2, maybe like a 0.3 shot difference, because that's going to cool these players down, right? Having that wind out there, it not being completely stagnant, is going to make them, at least for maybe some of the more out of shape players, a little bit more comfortable out there. At least I would be a lot more comfortable. That would have a huge impact on my game. So the scoring average, I'd say like 1.5 under par is probably a good barometer to go with. This 1.83 under par, right, like I said, might be a little bit better than what you see today. But I don't think it's going to be a massive effect. If you're trying to find an edge for Showdown, I don't really think there's going to be one. If we do split it by the quote-unquote waves in round one, and remember, there's no waves, right? It's the first 15 players versus the last 15 players that they're comparing here. You could see there was, a 0.31 shot difference between the two quote-unquote waves out there. So maybe the early starters that had a little bit less to lose, maybe it was that. Maybe it's the fact that they had slightly, and it's just like ever so slightly more receptive greens, had like a 0.3 shot advantage, right? But there's likely just a lot of variance with that. When you only have a 15 player sample size, outliers are really going to change these averages. So that's why I say take that with a grain of salt. Based on what I'm looking at here for tomorrow, I don't see a distinct quote unquote wave edge, right? When you're playing the early players, which we're going to do plenty of here for today, it's not really going to be because they're in better conditions, right? It's much more from the game theory side that we're getting players that are lower owned because they didn't have the best day one, and that's why I'm getting to them, right? So when you go through my player pool, when you see some of the decisions that I'm making here, it's not really because of the weather situation. To make some clarification there. Let's hop over to DFS, talk through some of the strategy for today, and get into any questions that you've got down there. So where are we at with questions? Let's see, it's already expired. Yeah, I'll shoot you a link. Yeah, 10 people must have used it then. Maga says, you really hope Rory has a miraculous recovery. Hey, if he doesn't, he doesn't, right? Is what it is, right? That's what it is with golf betting. There are injuries that come out of nowhere that literally no one could have predicted. Is what it is. I guess we'll see. And you said you wish you would have seen it. Like I said, you can't control it. I can't control it, right? It pissed me off for about 2 seconds. And then I said, you know what? Is what it is, right? There's guys like Tom Kim that are playing injured, right? There are other guys out there in the field that I'm sure have the same kind of stuff going on that we just don't hear about, right? Rory likes to be a little bitch sometimes and take the easy way out, right? You've seen that plenty of times. Heck, not even playing the RBC Heritage this year. He's the type of guy to get any sort of excuse humanly possible and ride into the sunset with it, right? So I don't know. I'm not that worried about it. Is what it is with the kid. He looked injured out there yesterday. I have to say he's either a really good actor or he's actually injured out there. He's probably just really injured, but he could wake up today and be fine. We'll have to see. I'm going to keep an eye on him out there on the range today. In fact, if he looks good during his range session, I'm 100% going to bet some props for him, right? Because if he's warming up and he has no issues, the props, especially that they have on Underdog for him, are extremely mispriced. They have him at like 69 strokes, 4 birdies. If he wakes up and that soreness, that tightness is gone, which can completely happen with a back injury, he'd be an absolute steal out there. So we'll have to see. Rory P sitting down. Exactly. Yeah, I think it is bugged right now, Bradley. I think just the last post, though. So, yeah, there was nothing on there that you needed. It was just a review of the Euro slips that we hit from overnight, which little $450 never hurt, right? Those Euro slips were pretty nice. But, yeah, it's bugged. Rory P sitting down. Agree with you. Rory will come back and win. That's what I'm saying, man. It'll come down to today, right? If he wakes up and the back is better, which I'm going to go to the range and 100% try and figure out what's going on. If he's better, he's going to be fine. But if he wakes up and he's still hurting, he might withdraw from the event, to be honest. 5-person AM, 1 p.m. guy, or 4 a.m. with 2 p.m. There's no waves, Clay, so I wouldn't be worrying about that at all. In fact, yeah, weather's completely negligible to me today. The first news article on Rory's injury was like 60 minutes before the tee time. Yeah, exactly, Clint, right? So, like, I actually had a buddy I met on the golf course yesterday. If he's watching this live stream, what's going on? We were talking about Rory, and essentially I was like, you know what? Like, you can get pissed off about it because I was kind of ticked off when I first learned about it. I was like, or I can just realize that, like, there's nothing I can do about it, right? Our bets are in. I placed it on fucking Monday, right? And we're getting the injury news on Wednesday, even Thursday morning, right? Didn't even come out on Wednesday. It's like, okay, like, cool. Nothing we can do about it now. You took both of those props. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking for Rory, man. But I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait to see how he is on the golf course first. Of course, how are the greens playing? Not sure. I'm not at the golf course, man. So we'll have to see later on. If you're in the Patreon or the Discord, I'll be able to give you that info. But can't say it until I'm out there, right? Does Morikawa keep it dialed up today? I don't think so, man. Let's just go through the strategy, right? I think it's a perfect segue, by the way. Here for round 2 showdown, it's your normal round 2 showdown slate. So, and I say that in a good way because we don't have all these damn starting strokes to worry about, right? Placement points aren't a thing for round 2. And we also don't have to worry about this wonky ass pricing. You don't have guys at like 13 grand. You don't have guys down here at like $5,000. And the resulting factor of that is that the 6K range is once again a pivot, right? Even like the lower end of the 7K range is once again a pivot zone. And up top, right, you have a lot of chalk. I mean, like your 9 and 10K options, because there aren't even that many this week, which is kind of wild. I mean, look at this, right? From like 9K plus, we have 7 golfers to choose from, right? Compared to main slate, there were like 15 guys, right, that were from $9,000 plus, or at least like $8,500 plus. Like half the field was priced from there up. The first off, the ownership is completely different, like I'm mentioning, but also your lineup construction, right? It's much more typical. You can live in that mid-tier range if you want to. And, guys like Rom, who I love for tomorrow, right, are just severely mispriced, right? $9,700 for John Rom, Xander at $9,400 on this course. I mean, even $9,100 for Cantlay, who we're going to talk about, are just absolute steals. So everyone up here, I think, except for Rory, everyone but Rory up here is like 30% out. Cantlay, you can see have at like 29%. I think Xander actually have at 40+% ownership. And I know Hovland for a fact. I have it over 40% ownership. That's just because of the slate, the pricing, the way that they set it up. I don't know if it was a mistake from DraftKings to only have 7 guys from $9,000 plus, but it's certainly having a huge impact on the slate. So up top, if you're not taking a Rory, you're not going to find any pivot whatsoever. So if you're going to play anyone up there, just do it knowing you're playing some chalk, right? So if you're in a large field GPP, you're going to have to differentiate at least 1, maybe 2 other spots in your lineup. If you're in a single entry, that sort of thing, there's just nothing you can do about it, right? It's a 30-player field. You're going to have a higher chance of duplicating yourself. Maybe pivot on one of your spots, right, in a single entry, that kind of lineup, and you should be okay, right? It's a smaller field thing, right? If you're in a 200, 300 entry contest, one pivot really is all you need to go out there and differentiate yourself, especially when everyone in that mid to top tier range is going to be chalky. So those are the dynamics at play. You always want to be taking a game theory approach to these sort of slates, right? It's an 18-hole sample size. There are no placement points to worry about. So just to get back to your question, John, right, to kind of bring this whole segue back together here, where are we at with your question? Does Morikawa keep it dialed today? Probably not, right? He's going to be much higher owned because of his round in round 1. He's severely mispriced of what he did down low. And I already have exposure to main slate, right? So I've got exposure for round 1. I've got exposure for main slate. So I don't really feel like I have to chase that performance. Whereas a lot of the field, right, are going to see, oh, Morikawa was dialed, right? 61 out there, and try and tail that. It's really hard to back up those kind of performances, right? Whether it's psychology, whether it's just pure on math, right? Regression to the mean, right? After a spike round. Those are the reasons that I don't love like a few examples. Morikawa, Keegan Bradley, anyone else that spiked for like a 4 or 5 under par round in round 1, like Adam Schenk, right? -6 with no bogeys. It's tough to get back to those guys, right? It's hard to back that up, and they're going to be so much higher owned than they should be because of that attention. So that's the idea there. So Rory's injured and out. Sorry, you've been under a rock. He's not out. He's playing CV, but yeah, he's injured. That's for sure. He's got some sort of a upper back issue, it looks like. Fading those guys who went ballistic yesterday, completely agree. Exactly. Really, I think there's only one guy I'm playing in my entire player pool that had like a decent day yesterday, and it's Terrell Hatton. I'm playing it. I think he's like 25% owned. So it's like not even that much above the average. But yeah, I agree for the most part there, man. Fleetwood bounce back. Yes, I think that he's got a chance to. I'll be playing him. Mike says you got $500 on Hatton and Fitz to be the chop from Great Britain. You need Rory withdrawal. I could see that. Yeah, I mean, honestly, dude, if he wakes up and he doesn't have, the best stuff, wakes up with that back, you might withdraw. I could see it. Gavin says you got a free 4-man flex. So you're trying to get something locked in. Hey, we'll talk about props later on, man. But if you're on the Patreon, I've already got a bunch of props posted on there. You could easily just pick from that list. Should be trying to leave at least $1,000 salary on the table. You don't need to today, Clay. So good question, because for main slate, we had to do that, right? When we had all those like 30% owned guys in the 5K range, you had to find a way to differentiate yourself, right? You don't need to today. We have guys down here in this range, right? We have 9% on Emiliano Grillo. There are guys that are the same, if not lower ownership, right down here in the 6 and 7K range. You just put 1 or 2 of those guys in a lineup, Clay. There's no need. You could spend all 50,000 if you want to, right? So I would say that would be a little bit overkill unless you're taking all chalk at all 6 spots. What's going on, Christian? Thoughts on Terrell Hatton? I like him, Petey. So I'm playing him tomorrow because first off, the ownership's not out of hand on him. So if we go down here, the reason for that is Keegan Bradley's right next to him, right? Colin Morikawa is priced just $400 $400 ahead of him there at -10. Heck, even like Tom Kim, Russell Henley had pretty good rounds ones. So the reason why Hatton's ownership isn't in that 30 to 35% range, like it probably should be because he's only $7,100. He's like 25% owned. So yeah, I'm getting to Terrell Hatton. I know he had the good round one, but he's like the one guy, right, that had the good round one that's not getting that respect from the crowds. And he's still super cheap. So yeah, I like Terrell Hatton. I'm not locking him by any means, but I'm going to play him in like 35-40% of my lineups. Might not be true like 2x leverage to the field, but I'm not worried about that in a 30-player field. You got to treat it a little differently. When you say duplicating yourself, what does that mean? So if you're playing in like a 100,000 entry contest, duplicating yourself means entering the same set of 6 players. And while in like a single entry 2 to 3 max, it might not matter, right? You're just like splitting a place with someone else. When you're in like the large field GBPs with 100,000 entries, the prizes up top are normally like 100,000, 250,000. Sometimes they're milli makers, right? Where you're winning $1 million to first place, and second place will sometimes be a fourth of that, sometimes even a fifth of what first place is. So it'll be like 100K to first, and then second place will be like 200K, right? So if you duplicate yourself, in theory, even if you were to win that contest, right, your expected value goes from $100,000 down to like $62,000, $62,500 or something like that. It's just from the numbers perspective, if you run simulations of like your results over like a 5 to 10 year sample size, that specific factor, duplicating yourself, is just detrimental to your results. Like it takes you from being like a plus EV player, if you're making the right kind of lineups, making the right kind of moves with ownership, it takes you to a losing player if you're duplicating yourself with other players. So it's more for like the large field contest, like where you're playing against like 100,000 other people. You don't want to be duplicating the same set of 6 players. What are your thoughts on X? He smashes here and has a good round 2 history. I like him. I'm playing him today, Bobby. So definitely there with you. Yo, Luke, you tried DMing me on Twitter, wasn't able to. I think I have to follow you, Brett. I don't have my DMs open. So you can either tweet me or something or message me on like Patreon. Or you could just ask here. I have no idea what you're wondering about, man. Key based, is this for East Lake Golf Club? Absolutely. That's where the Tour Championship is, man. They're going to be playing there all weekend. So, all right, let's go through a few other things for today. So in terms of players that I'm getting to, right, we've talked about the general strategy, right? Game theory based, trying to make pivots. Well, up top, you're not going to find those pivots, right? So there are a few chalky pieces I'm playing. They're not all here on the sheet. Obviously, on the Patreon page, guys, I have even more players I'm getting to. With only 30 players to choose from, especially when I have 60 lineups in play here for Friday's action, I'm going to have to take at least, I think there's 19 players in my player pool, right? So it's like 2/3 of the field. So we're only going to talk about like 7 of the guys that I'm playing here. Obviously, there's 7 guys that I really like for tomorrow, but there's even more exposure on Patreon. I like Scotty for a bounce back. I also like John Rahm for bounce backs. They didn't play like the world number 1, 2, and 3 players in the world yesterday. You could, obviously lump Rory McIlroy into that, but he did have the excuse with injury. Out here for the second round, if they had any semblance of form, they'd be the highest owned players on the slate, right? Like sub 10K for Rahm. I mean, it's a fair enough price tag, right? For Scotty Scheffler at $11,000, they would be the 45, nearly 50% owned players instead of guys like a Victor Hovland. So I'm getting to those two just knowing that we're getting an inherent ownership and price decrease because of how they played here for Thursday. And they're world-class players. They're more than capable of bouncing back, right? It's Showdown. Crazy shit happens over 18 hole sample sizes. And if the people, in general are going to overreact to that kind of performance, then I have no issues going out there and taking the pivots. So the ownership's still there, right? They're like 30% owned. So let's not call them like true pivot plays, right? You're still going to have to find some sort of differentiation and leverage with the rest of your lineup, but they're not as chalky, right? As like a Victor Hovland there. The only real pivot, the actual like pivot that you could take up top in terms of like getting like 3-4x leverage to the field would be Rory, but until I see him warming up, which isn't going to be until after lock. So I'm not going to be able to, change my DFS lineups in time. I really wouldn't get exposure there. If he plays the same way he did yesterday, his best round's like 2-3 under par, and at $10,900, that's not going to be optimal. It's just not. So hopefully he's healthier. Hopefully he does rebound. It feels like a risk that I can't take. Just feels a little too risky for me. Down here in this 9K range, love Patrick Cantlay for a little bit of a bounce back himself. He didn't have the best round in round one, but it really wasn't all that horrible either, right? He kept the round together. I believe finished at -1 at the end of the day. 9,100's a very fair price tag. In fact, you can easily use them as a second, potentially even a third man in, right? With lineups that you're starting in the 9K range. And I love him for that reason too. In terms of projected points, it actually projects even better than John Rahm because of some of the recent form for Patrick Cantlay. And he's nearly $8,000 in the $8,000 range. Like Tommy Fleetwood for a bounce back. I know we got a question about Tommy Ladd before. He had just a rough day early. Right? He got off to a horrible start through his first 3-4 holes. Looked a lot better on the back 9. I saw him hit a few iron shots. The only iron shots I saw were shots to like 5 or 6 feet. He made one of the birdie putts and then missed 2 of the other ones from like, I think a 7-8 footer, right? For the 2 misses that he had. I mean, he just gets those to drop, right? The round looks a lot better for round 1. And now we're getting an ownership decrease, right? Because of how he was playing in round 1. So $8,200, definitely considering that. Let's keep going down a little bit further. So we got Sanjay at -1. He's obviously got a really good track record here, so I'm playing Sanjay. Corey Connors, not as good of a track record, but the thing I like about Corey is the ownership, right? He's only like 11.6% owned, but also with Corey Connors, I really like the fact that he can get hot in a hurry. Off the tee, he's not been as accurate this year as he historically is at Eastlake. But if he can go out there, start to hit like 8, maybe 9 fairways per round, when he's really hot, he's capable of hitting like all 13 or maybe even all 14 fairways in any given round on tour. And if he does that, his iron game's electric. We know the kind of player that he can be. He just has spike round written all over him, right? All it comes down to is getting into that groove off the tee. And Corey Connors is going to set up like 9 or 10 birdie looks. Now, the putter has to cooperate too, right? So it's not as straightforward. It's just going out there and hitting all the fairways. But he's definitely got an avenue to like a 62 or even like a 61 like we saw like a Colin Morikawa. Very similar player, right? Very accurate off the tee, very good iron player. So definitely guys I'm considering. And then the last play we want to use as a highlighted play here and be Emiliano Grillo at $6,400. He's +3. He had a horrible day round 1, still managed to make 3 birdies, and now has nothing to lose, right? And I think that's the main thing I like about Grillo. He's in last place. He literally has nothing to lose. He cannot miss the cut. He's going to make at least $500,000 for finishing in last place at this golf tournament. All he cares about is slightly improving his position, right? And for him to move up the board to really get back up into the golf tournament, he's got to shoot like 7-8 under par. So we know that Grillo, who's already an aggressive ass player, right, is going to go out there and take aim at every single pin. So Grillo at +3, definitely somebody I'm considering for my lineups, especially because he's only 9.4% owned, right? With the average ownership at like 20% in this kind of field, absolutely insane. They have Grillo at like 9.4%. Let's catch up on chat, see what's going on. Just wanted to say thanks for the help. You produced a lot of green slips on Prize Picks, especially when you were in the Discord. Of course, Brett. You're wondering what DFS is for golf. Yeah, and by the way, if you want to reach out, I'm going to follow you on Twitter too. But yeah, we can answer any questions here too. For DFS is essentially fantasy golf. So on Draftkings, Brett, they have these single day contests that they call Showdown. They have main slate stuff that they do for like the 4 rounds. So if you see my DFS content like Monday through Wednesday, it's for the full tournament. So that's like the main slate, they say. And then what we're talking about here, like for the live streams, this is the daily contest. So essentially you only get graded on fantasy stats from today. There's no like placement. So it doesn't matter if you're in like first place or last place, like in Emiliano Grillo. It's just all about how many birdies, pars, maybe birdie streaks you make in any given round, and trying to get the best players for that given day. So you have a salary constraint to work with. You try and take the best combination of 6 players below $50,000, and you play for prizes. So hopefully that helps you there. Andrew, hey, you banked the late round Showdown yesterday for $200. That is sick, man. We actually had a few guys in the Discord do well for round 1 Showdown too. Let's run it back for today, Andrew. So first off, congrats there. That's a heck of a takedown. $200, I'm sure probably a pretty low entry fee out there, especially because the late round contests aren't that big. That's a nice ass day, man. It's a good stuff, dude. And of course, always you're welcome for that. All right, let's go through a few lineup construction things real quick and then talk about some props, which I think props for today, there's some overs and some unders I like, and I like these kind of slates. So I'm excited to get into it. First off, if you guys aren't in the community contest already for today, make sure to get in there. It's a $5 single entry. Get to play for bragging rights, get to get your lineup reviewed if you want to on the stream tomorrow, and to talk some shit, right? Get an extra little bit of exposure for round 2 showdown. And the best part is if you win, you can come in here in the stream tomorrow and tell us all about it, right? Tell us how bad all of our lineups were and whatnot. So check it out if you're not in there already. It'll be a lot of fun. But in terms of lineup construction, let me just show you what I mean by this chalk, right? So like if you were to start with, let's go Rahm, right? Because like you could so easily start a lineup with John Rahm, right? It's John Rahm, for goodness sakes, and he's $9,700. So let's put him in there, let's put Cantlay in there, and let's put Fleetwood, right? If we were to start with those 3 highlighted plays, right, that I put in the stream here, you still have like $76, nearly $7,700 left per player. I mean, that is just ridiculous, right? So what you kind of got to do here is force yourself to be different. So we can't afford Scotty. Okay, that's a little bit too different, right? Only using 5 players in the lineup. That'd be definitely different to most people. Let's throw Xander in there, okay? So what I mean by forcing yourself to be different, right, is not so much in terms of players, like that's going to be the byproduct of what we're doing here, but more so via lineup construction, right? So if we started with these 3 players at the top, right, we had like nearly $7,700, people are just going to be tempted to be balanced, right? They're like, oh, maybe take an 8K guy, right, a couple of 7K guys, and finish off your lineup. Well, the way to differentiate yourself in a large field GPP, or at least I think a creative way to go about it, right, is to change it up in terms of lineup construction. Take an extra 9K player and then dip down into the 6K range, right? Maybe you go down here and you take the Emiliano Grillo that we talked about before, right? That's going to be like 10% owned. You finish it off with some sort of pivot down here towards the bottom of the 7s, and you've got yourself a GPP lineup. The issue is here, right? If you were to take Tom Kim, let's say that theoretically, right, he was your last man in here. I don't think this lineup is different enough, right? You've got Grillo, who's kind of a pivot. Fleetwood, we'll say, is kind of a pivot himself too. But like Xander, Cantlay, and Rahm getting some ownership. And then if you were to play Tom Kim or even Terrell Hatton, right, both of those guys are like 20, 25% owned too. So in the largest of large field GPPs, this kind of lineup would be borderline, right? If you took a Tom Kim, what I would like to do here, at least for my kind of lineups, right, would be to dip down here to at most like a Corey Connors, right? Maybe even like a Tony Finau or a Sibu Kim, leave just a little bit of salary on the table. So that way now we have, 2, maybe quote unquote 3 pivots in that lineup. And we're differentiating ourselves in terms of the salary constraint. So it's all dependent on the contest you're entering, right? If you were in like a single entry contest, 2 to 3 max, even like a 20 max, but maybe a little bit smaller 20 max, right? Not like the really big 20 maxes that they post. Maybe you could play Tom Kim, right? Maybe you could take that lineup, right? Because you still have the 2 pivots, and like you're in a smaller field contest, right? It's just you're not as worried about duplicating. You're not as worried about leverage in those kind of contests. You could probably get away with that. So just wanted to point that out. It's a weird slate, right? It's a lot. I apologize, guys. Hopefully my mic's back. I don't think it was unplugged for very long. It's using the wrong mic right now, so I'm going to try and fix that. I probably sound terrible. So let me see if we can get it back on the Yeti microphone. That'd be great. If not, I guess we're going to go with the MacBook. Can you guys hear me at the very least? But hopefully you can at least hear me. It probably sounds terrible. Let's see. Is it going to work? We might be on the backup mic. Oh, no, the regular mic's back. Cool. I think it unplugged again. I was going to say apologize about that. Good thing we got it fixed. But it's going crazy on us right now. Apologize again. All right, let's look at some prop stuff now. So we've already gone through the board a little bit. We already had a little bit of greened out goblins this morning out there with those Euro Tour slips. Let's go ahead and add to it. I keep getting notifications that my mic is going out. So you guys can hear me. That's good. On my end, it's tripping out. It's telling me that the mic's going in and out like nonstop. So I apologize. All right, we're just going to go with the mic for the laptop. I think that's the issue, right? As I was using the professional mic, it's going crazy. All right, in terms of props, let's try and find some value out here. So first off, I took a few props on here that are still here. So over here on Prize Picks, the slip that I'm going to give you guys here would be Hovland over and John Rahm over. The averages for round one, let's see. Let's not split this by morning and afternoon. It was 4.66 birdies or better per round. So it was over 4.5, right? Like we have for these two guys' projections here. And though I do think it'll play slightly harder today, right? I think you'll see slightly higher winds, maybe a little bit firmer and faster than it was before. These are elite tier players, right? That are, first off, John Rahm's the #1 birdie maker on tour. Victor Hovland's the #4 birdie maker on tour. Right? These kind of elite tier players sometimes are making 1 to 1.5 birdies more per round than their counterparts. So for them to be at or even slightly below the round average for round one feels like a mistake. Hovland just couldn't buy a putt yesterday. His ball striking was on point. Guy didn't make a bogey all day. So I definitely think he could go out there, get a few more putts to drop. John Rahm, he still covered this 4.5 birdie mark, yet only shot -1, right? Still had mistakes out there, didn't have his best stuff with the ball striking, yet still made 5 birdies. So that's why I like the value here. Rahm would have covered in round one. Hovland wouldn't have, but both of them were playing much better golf than I think the scorecard may indicate. Over here for Underdog, I've already played a bunch of props. Some of them have bumped, but not all of them. So I'll go ahead and give you guys a slip over here too. So some of my favorite props are actually unders on bogeys. So we're going to take Patrick Cantlay over here on Underdog. He's at 2.5 bogeys. He's the #2 bogey avoider on all of the PGA Tour. They had Scotty, believe it or not, at 2.5 bogeys too. And I took that under right away. Unfortunately, that one did bump down to 2 bogeys. But Cantlay, right, the #2 bogey avoider is that same kind of player, right? Like he's, the average, just to give you context too, for bogeys in round one was 2.56 per round, right? So it was like right at 2.5. A guy like Cantlay, Scotty Scheffler, that's an elite tier bogey avoider. You could throw guys like Harman into that conversation. Very accurate guys like Russell Henley, right? Don't make a lot of bogeys out there. Jason Day, right, is I think the #4 bogey avoider in all the PGA Tour. Those kind of players project well under the 2.5 bogey mark. So let's go ahead and throw Cantlay in there. And let me find a good pairing here now. So is Griot still up? Or did they bump Griot? They may have bumped Griot. Yeah, so the Griot was at 3.5 birdies last night. They did bump him up to 4. We could take Rahm birdies. I know they have him at 4.5, so we could take that if we wanted to. I just don't want to use the same prop twice. I'd rather go out there, give you guys 4 different props out here for round one. So let's see, who else did I take? I don't have a ton of slips in for Underdog today. I have like a decent amount, but not a ton. That's right. We could take one of the unders I took, right? Okay. Where's Henley? So I took an under on Henley birdies. Let's see, did they have the other one up I took? Was it Fitz? They do have them up. Did they bump that down? Look at this. This looks like it's coming off the board. They bump it? No, they just took it off the board. Okay. So this will be the slip that we go with over here on Underdog. It's an under on Patrick Cantlay bogeys, and then it's an under, right? Not an over. It's an under on Russell Henley birdies. So like I said, the average for birdies today on round one was like 4.66. I do think it'll be slightly harder today. So maybe like a 4.5 average. Somebody like Russell Henley, who's far from an elite tier birdie maker, right, should not be projecting up there with the John Rahms, the Victor Hovlands of the world, right? They make a solid half a birdie to 1 birdie more per round. And somebody like Russell Henley. So for him, Fitzpatrick, I also liked for an under at 4.5 birdies. Like there are overs and unders I like, right? Because what happened in round one is a lot of the elite tier players didn't play all that well. And then a lot of the scrubs played well. So on Underdog specifically, where I think they overcompensate for 1 round performance, they went out there, they bumped up, like I should say, I guess bumped down on strokes, right? Bumped up birdies on a lot of the scrubs that played well in round one. And then the elite tier guys, they left at the same numbers, right? So like what we're getting here is the elite tier guys are now the value and the scrubs are the guys that we can go out there and fade. So that's how I attacked the slate. I think a lot of the projections make a lot of sense. I think that across the board, even over there on Prize Picks, they have a lot of sharp projections, but there are definitely some overcompensations that we can take advantage of there too. So that's the way that I handled it on that site. And now let's go into any questions. No Crown and Coke. Definitely not. And I didn't have any yesterday too. It's way too hot for that. It's a 105-degree heat index. Hell no. How much longer is golf going this year? So this is the last event of this season. There's going to be a 2-week break where there'll be some Euro Tour golf stuff that I'll probably be covering. And then when we get right back into it, the season starts up, I believe, like, was it September, like 14th? Yeah, so just a little bit over 2 weeks after the end of this golf tournament, they'll be playing over there for the Fortinet Championship. So the next season starts in 2 weeks. Who's watching my cat while I'm away? I hired somebody to come over, watch them every single day. So I let them into my apartment. They feed them. They play with them for like a half an hour, make sure my cats are doing okay. And I get to FaceTime with them too. So it's nice. Cool. He can hear me. And yeah, no Crown and Coke CV. Only a coffee this morning. It's way too early for a Crown and Coke. And frankly, I'm probably not going to drink an ounce of alcohol this week with how hot it is. There's just no point. I'm exhausted by the time I get off the course. I'm definitely not drinking out on the course. That is a huge mistake if you go out there and you drink in 100-degree weather. You just learned that as a South Floridian, by the way. Like, if it's super hot outside, there's a reason why you don't see people golfing in the middle of summer in Florida. Like, it's no fun. Any strokes props, I'd play for like 69 per day. I actually prefer their bogey props. So let me see if they still have day at 3. They probably don't. They do. Okay, so maybe instead of Cantley, you could even take this day under bogeys. I'd slightly prefer that. The main reason why, let me just show you the main reason why, is I don't think you're getting the best value, right? So if you go over here, Jason Day, his strokes prop, he's minus 150 over 68.5, right? So I think 69 is pretty fair. Jason Day is projected over the bogey average, over it, right? At 3 bogeys, he's the number 4 bogey avoider on tour. Right behind, I think it's Scotty, Rahm, and Cantlay. I think are the top 3 bogey avoiders, and then Jason Day is number 4. So, and then Harman, I think Harman's up there too in the top 4 or 5. Guys like Jason Day should not be at 3 bogeys. So maybe you want to take that one instead. Wouldn't blame you at all. Cool. You'll join the Patreon to start the new season. Sounds good, Brett. Definitely want to have you on board. You're definitely more than welcome. And it'll be a lot of fun. There's not as many events during the fall. Like, it's usually, I think it'll be like every other week that they're doing it this time, at least early in the season. We got the Ryder Cup. We've got the fall swing to worry about. It'll be a lot of fun. Definitely glad to have you on board, man. Let's see. Anything else for props I want to go over? I guess on Underdog, just know that there's overs and unders to take. So it's not like, I like all positive stances on this sort of day. And then over here on Prize Picks, they don't have as much of a selection, right? I hate to say it, but Underdog is stepping up their game, right? They're offering arguably a larger selection, right, than what we're getting over here. And the reason why I say that is they're offering every single player on the board, right, on Underdog, and they have 4 or 5 categories up, right? Whereas Prize Picks, sure, they may have the same amount of categories, right? What do they have? Actually, 1 extra category, 6 categories, but they only have like 3, 6, 9, 10 birdie props up. For pars or better, they only have like, 3, 6, 9, 12, 13 up, right? For bogey props. Like, come on, start giving us the whole board, right? Underdog is at least going out there and pricing the whole board. Like, come on, what are you doing over here, Prize Picks? Anything that really stands out? I didn't play that much on Prize Picks. After the stream, I'll probably go through the board again, try and see if I can find a slip or 2 to add. But as of right now, really that Victor and that John Rahm prop are the main 2 props I took on this slate. I think a lot of the other guys at 4.5, I'd probably avoid, like especially Spieth, like 4.5 birdies. Yeah, I wouldn't take the under. I'll tell you that. I guarantee you I would not take the under, but I definitely wouldn't take the over either. You can see Fitz down here is at 4 birdies. Guys like him, Russell Henley, for sure, if they posted the whole board, right, would probably both be at like 4 birdies. Over here on this site is another reason why I liked their unders over there in Underdog. That's all I've got for the live stream, guys. We'll see if there's any questions. There aren't. We're good. Appreciate you, Luke. Appreciate you, Babu Booey. What's going on? You got your eyes on greens regulation. Yeah, I didn't see any I loved myself. But hey, if you like them, man, feel free to bet them, right? If you see an edge out there, feel free to exploit it. But that's all I've got here for round 2, guys. We'll be doing a stream tonight covering round 3. More of a typical starting time, right? It'll be like probably like 7, maybe 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. So keep an eye out for that on my Twitter, and we'll get ready to attack the weekend as well. Best of luck out there with your lineups, any outright bets, props that you've got going. Hit that like button on the way out of here, and let's get this cash today, fellas.